Hi everyone, and welcome to Mastering Your Money Part 1, where we'll be learning about budgeting. We'll be covering what a budget is, why it's important to have one, the basics on how to create your own, and the more important things to keep in mind when making one, as well as some other interesting things. My name is Giovanni. If you stick around until the end of the video, you'll get to learn a little bit more about what Mass Credit Relief does and how we can assist you on your personal finance journey. Also, by the end of the video, you'll be fully equipped with the knowledge needed to absolutely crush the 10-question quiz I've prepared for you. Don't worry, it's multiple choice, there aren't any trick questions, and I'll make sure to include some hints during the presentation on things that might show up on the quiz, so it should be a piece of cake. Be sure to have a pen and paper ready, and if you have to pause the video to jot some notes down, I encourage it, and you should. Are you ready? Let's dive right in. So I'd like to start us off with a simple yet powerful message by Dave Ramsey, author of The Total Money Makeover, and probably the first person that pops up on Google when you search up anything on personal finance. He says, "You must gain control over your money, or the lack of it will forever control you." I can relate to this myself. Before I learned anything about money or personal finance, before I learned how to track how I spent my money, I was lost. I was always struggling to try to pay my bills on time, working paycheck to paycheck, and when it was all said and done, at the end of the month, I would find myself either only having a few dollars left in my bank account, or even worse, a negative balance with fees. This was an ugly cycle every month for me. It lasted for years and years until I decided to do some homework and take back control. By this point, you've heard me mention it a few times, but what even is a budget? I personally like to keep things simple, so I like to define it as a financial spending plan that is based off of your expected income. It's a combination of planning and applying, where you take whatever money you receive, whether through your 9-to-5 job, side hustle, business, or other source, and you plan, track, and spend the best way fit for your lifestyle and goals. Some people make budgets to make more money, save more money, or to accomplish other specific goals they have. Now, we will go over the basic idea of making one, as well as some specific styles that people like using. But before we get into that, let's talk about why we even need one in the first place. So why is budgeting so important? Well, the main thing is taking control of your money. It allows you to see on paper where your money goes on a weekly or monthly basis. It allows you to plan ahead. Wouldn't it be nice to know that you can afford a new car, for example, in 3 to 6 months because you and your budget allow it? A budget can help with stress, and that's super important to your overall health. When you know where your money is going every month, you don't have to worry so much about being late on bills or whether or not you have any left over. Because even if you don't have any money left over currently, a budget can help you then decide whether you need to cut things out or find another source of income. It can help you pay off debt or avoid it altogether. Knowing how much money you have left over can help you put some aside and pay off any existing debt or save some money so you don't even need a loan or a credit card for a big purchase. It also really helps with emergencies. I know the feeling of having a flat tire and having to even find loose change to make sure I have enough to buy a new one. Putting some money aside every week in a rainy day fund, for example, can help when life just happens. Assuming you and I are on the same page, and we both agree that budgeting is important, we can move forward and start working on some things. However, not everyone feels the same way about budgeting. Let's take a look at how we as a country are doing according to some sources. 59% of Americans don't budget their money. According to a poll conducted, only 25% of Americans think budgeting is even important. So what is the result of this? Well, more than half of Americans not budgeting, and most of us not even caring, has led to almost 70% of us not even having $1,000 in the bank that can be used for emergencies or savings. Almost half of Americans would need to borrow money to cover a $400 emergency. Over 40% of Americans spend more than they make, and 34% of Americans have no plans for their financial futures. When you think about how many people in your life complain or stress about money, and now knowing this information, you might assume that a lot of their stresses could go away if they just learned a bit about budgeting and money and applied it to their lives. Will a budget make all their problems go away? Absolutely not. But can it potentially relieve some stress? I know it can. So why don't more people care? Why don't more of us budget? Here are a few reasons. We sometimes hear budget and think bread and water. We feel it limits us once we decide what our priorities are. We're afraid of what we'll find. It might hurt us knowing that we spend on average $1,440 on Dunkin's breakfast every year. Our pride gets in the way. I don't need a budget. right? I'll let you in on a secret. Even the wealthiest people still budget out their money. Anyone can make $1 million, but not everyone learns to keep it or turn it into $5 million. Laziness. We've all been there. Understanding the benefits and creating those habits will help you not only get excited, but make it so that it feels unnatural to not budget or stick to your plan. We don't know how to create one. Well, you're here now. You're always going to keep learning and adjusting. The important thing is to do research and to start somewhere. Some people say it leads to fights between me and my wife, husband, significant other. Look, if you both can decide on what your priorities are, stick to the plan, and see yourself hitting your goals, what is there to even fight about? Others might say, I have plenty of money left over every month. Well, that's more the reason to plan ahead. I had someone once tell me to always dig your well before you're thirsty, and this was some of the best advice I ever got. Planning for the unexpected has been something that has helped me and a lot of others in many situations that otherwise would have been catastrophic. More than anything, it's a mindset. We can make any excuses we want, but it still has to be done. So we now know the basic idea of what a budget is. We know why it's important to have one, we know how not having one can affect us, and why we sometimes fail to budget. I think it's time we get our hands dirty and figure this thing out together, don't you? Great. So let's go over the 5 basic steps to take when creating a budget. The first is to figure out your income. Simply take what you make from your job and add any other source of income to it. Like I mentioned before, this could be from a second job, but it can also be child support, or if you're currently unemployed and collecting unemployment checks, those count too. The next step is to pick a budgeting style. I'll be going over those in about a minute or two. Once you choose your style, the next thing to do is to start tracking your spending. Prioritize what needs to get paid first. This might be rent, car insurance, things that you might consider an important bill. Then look at everything else and categorize them. I'm going to challenge you a bit. Print out your last month's bank statement and go down every item. Categorize every single thing you spend money on and include them into your budget. Then decide if they're important to keep. Is it worth going to Dunkin's every day? Can we wake up a bit earlier to make breakfast at home? Is it worth $1,440 to not change this habit? That could make a huge difference. Now I get it. Doing this can be scary. Some of us might not like what we find. But look at it this way. You're being honest with yourself and doing things to make some better changes in your life. So really, you can't lose. The fourth step is to automate your savings. Some might say that before you pay your bills, you should pay yourself, and there is some truth to that. If all your bills are paid, and you have some money left over, you should automatically have some money set aside into a separate bank account, envelope, or whatever works best for you. This will ensure that you start saving up for that vacation, car, or even your emergency fund. The last step is to revisit your budget when needed. When starting out, I recommend you do this at least once a month for the first 3 to 6 months. Your spending habits can change depending on the month, season, and even your mood. So get a good feel for what that looks like and find out what works best for you and your lifestyle. Keep in mind that the goal when creating your budget is to increase your savings and decrease your spending whenever possible. Here's a super simple example of a budget made in Microsoft Excel. This can also be made just as well with a piece of paper and a pen, so don't get too hung up on how you're actually getting it down on paper. I recommend pausing the video at this point and taking a quick look at this example. Press play when you're ready to continue. So now we get into the different styles of budgeting. I've put together the 5 most popular styles here for you, so let's go over them. The first one is the 50-30-20 rule. When budgeting out your spending, you'll want to set aside 50% for fixed expenses. These are things like rent, mortgage, car insurance, etc. Things that are super important and that might not really change in amount. 30% will go to the variable expenses. These are things that are still important, and although they might change from time to time in amount, you can still take a pretty good guess at how much you spend on average, like gas for your car or groceries, and even credit cards. Lastly, 20% will go to your financial goals. These are savings, paying off debt, or your rainy day fund. The 50-30-20 rule makes it easy to identify where you may be overspending so that you can course correct as needed. Spending 40% of your income on variable expenses like food, for instance, is a sign that you need to dial back on eating out until you're comfortably within 30%. Similarly, if you're overspending on fixed expenses, it may mean borrowing from your flexible spending to make up the difference. This style is one of my personal favorites for just starting out. It's simple and it easily allows for adjusting if you do end up overspending. The next is the value-based style. People like to do things that make them happy. Though that may sound obvious, this interesting system operates under the assumption that unless your budget is customized to your individual priorities, for example, making you happy, you simply won't stick to it. After accounting for your most important bills, rent, mortgage, utilities, etc., along with your financial goals, really think about what brings you joy. This can range from charitable giving to weekly trips to the movies to daily lattes, whatever makes you happy. Prioritize your variable expenses so you can comfortably pay for those costs, and then stop spending on what doesn't matter. That's right, who says you can't get your nails done? Things like that are important to overall happiness. If it fits in your budget, even after putting money aside, why not? This style might be best for those who are already comfortable budgeting, who have money left over every month, and who ultimately just want to live comfortably. The flexible budget. This budgeting style is easygoing, with little work required, as long as you're good about staying consistent with your spending. First, automate all your monthly fixed expenses and financial goals. Then, whatever's left in the bank account until next payday is yours to spend, without much additional oversight. In other words, as long as your bills are being paid on time, you know you have enough left over for groceries and other variable expenses, and you have money set aside for savings, the rest can even be used for Dunkin's after all. There's not much to this style of budgeting, but I recommend it for people who rarely overspend, as it's the most hands-off approach. The ZeroSum Budget. At first, this budget might seem more confusing than the rest, but it's actually one of the most practical once you try it out. The main idea here is to account for every single dollar of income before it's even spent. For example, if you take home $2,000 every paycheck, you'll basically spend all $2,000 on paper as soon as you get paid. First, you'll pay off your fixed expenses and financial goals. Then, you assign all the remaining income to variable expenses until you reach zero. That way, you always know where your money must go for the month, which should help you decide if you can or cannot afford a splurge purchase. The trick here is to actually follow your budget once you have it written down. But if you do, it takes a lot of the uncertainty and chaos out of your day-to-day financial decisions. This one is my all-time favorite. It's the most strict in terms of how you spend your money, but it's the one style that got me out of my hole during my financial journey. It's the most strict in terms of how you spend your money, but it's the one style that got me out of my struggles during my financial journey. The envelope system. It doesn't get more old school than this. To follow this budget, you visit the bank or ATM after each payday and withdraw cash for things like groceries, eating out, shopping, and personal care items. You only withdraw what you need, and you only allow yourself to pay for those things with the cash you've withdrawn. Yup, it's that simple. It obviously won't work for every expense. It isn't so easy paying your rent or phone bill with cash, but it's ideal for preventing overspending because once that money is spent, it's gone. According to a now famous study out of MIT, consumers may be willing to pay up to 2 times more when paying with credit cards versus cash. I don't know too many people personally who still use this style, but it's not one-size-fits-all budgeting that we're talking about. Whichever style works for you will end up just being the right one. What if I'm married and my wife, husband, or spouse has a separate bank account? I get asked this a lot. If you'd like to pause the video at this point to read the whole slide, you're welcome to. But ultimately, in my opinion, sharing a household should mean sharing expenses just as well. I always recommend married couples to have joint bank accounts and budget everything together. However, it might not be that simple for every couple to do. As long as you both agree that our money is our money and you both agree to a budget that works, your money can still be in separate accounts as long as the bills are being paid on time and you can still have some money left over every month. What if my income changes? Some of your paychecks might rely on tips, sales commissions, or other factors that cause the amounts to change on a weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly basis. Again, pause the video if you'd like, but I'll explain. You have at least a couple options that I will clarify. Option 1 would be to base your spending on a monthly income minimum. In other words, let's say you're looking at every paycheck you've received for the last 2 to 4 months, and you take the least amount you've made and base your budget on that. If you know that worst case scenario you're making your minimum amount, Anything more than that is extra that can be used towards your savings or paying off some debt. Your second option I'll go over is what we call banking any excess money you make. For example, let's say you know your monthly expenses are $3,000 and this month you make $5,000. Take the extra $2,000 that you don't really need right now and put them in a separate account. Now, if you only make $2,000 next month, you know that you have an account that you can take $1,000 out of to make up for it and get to your $3,000 in expenses for that month. This option is really good for those whose income drastically changes month to month. I mentioned earlier that one goal in budgeting is to decrease spending. So how can we cut down? One way is by shopping around for better loan rates. If you're currently paying for a car loan, student loan, etc., shop around and weigh out your options for refinancing. You might benefit from better loan rates, lower monthly payments, or shorter loan terms. Another thing you can shop around for are utilities and service providers. When was the last time you looked around for a cheaper phone plan? Nowadays, they're almost all the same as far as service goes. You might qualify for a less expensive plan and even some promotions offered to new customers. Now, when times get really tough and you find yourself with more month left over than money, you might have to make some drastic changes. I've personally put together a rough guide to living in what I would call financial survival mode. Visit the link at the bottom to check that out. So at this point, we've looked at the 5 most popular styles of budgeting, we've covered a couple of pretty interesting but common scenarios people experience, and we've gone over ways of cutting down our spending. Here are some things to really think about when budgeting your money out. Remember that the basic formula for budgeting is your income minus your monthly debt payments and monthly expenses. If your number is positive, you're on the right track. Let's plan, save, and maybe even invest. If your number is negative, some changes will have to be made. It'll be tough, but so worth it. Don't set it and forget it. Budgets should be reviewed at least once a month. However, as you first start mastering it, it is recommended to do it once a week or once per payday to gauge how your money is actually working for you. It is highly recommended sharing the budget with your spouse or significant other, even if you are the one in charge of finances, let's say. It keeps everyone accountable and on the same page. Print out your bank statements, categorize your spending, find out where your money is really going. It's better to shave or decrease your variable or fixed expenses than your financial goals whenever possible. In other words, don't sacrifice your bigger, more important financial goals if you can find ways to decrease what you're spending on. You will thank yourself later. Start with small goals, saving $100 a month, investing $5 per week, or even just paying down an extra 5% on your credit cards, for example. As you get more comfortable, you can start setting bigger, realistic goals for yourself. Lastly, make your goals and stick to them. Remember, this is a mindset. You can only reap a harvest after the work is done. For an awesome goal setting tool that I personally love using for myself, visit the link at the bottom of this screen. Here, you'll see a list of resources, including budgeting tools, that can help you keep track of everything. Remember that there's no one specific budgeting tool or style that works best for everybody. Find out what works best for you. If you visit the link at the bottom of this screen, you'll get a sample budget template in Microsoft Excel format. But remember, you can use a pen and paper just as well. If you need to pause the video at this point, please feel free. So what have we learned? I know, it was a lot of information we went over, but here are the key takeaways I want you to remember. Number 1, it's your money. Budgeting will allow you to take control of your spending, saving, and help you manage emergencies. Number 2, it's a mindset. Nothing changes if nothing changes. Control your thoughts and you'll control your money. Number 3, review consistently. Check back every week or as needed. Life changes often, so learn to adapt and adjust as you go. And number 4, do your homework. Shop around for better rates. There are plenty of tools and resources online. It might take a bit of research and work, but the feeling of confidence and the ability to handle your finances are so worth it. I'll leave you with this quote by Howard Dvorkin, who is chairman of Debt.com. He says, "You should budget in the good times when money is coming in. That's how you save for retirement, for a house, for college. Budgeting when times are bad may help stop the bleeding, but it won't build your bank account. I can't stress enough how important it is to just start somewhere. You might not be a Dave Ramsey or a Bill Gates, I know I'm not, but use what you have now, learn as you go, and adjust as needed. I'm sure that in the future, you'll be glad that you started when you did. Wow, I know, that was a lot of information, but you made it. If you'd like more budgeting help, please feel free to reach out to me and my team by email or phone. We have plenty of resources to help you in your personal finance journey. At Mass Credit Relief, we specialize in using credit reporting and debt collection laws to help dispute inaccuracies off your credit reports. The goal is to increase your credit score by cleaning up those reports and building back up a healthy credit history, which we can also help you with. If you're interested in our credit repair services and mention this video when you call or email us, you'll get a discounted monthly price, so be sure to take advantage of that. So, now that you've learned and taken some notes, I think you're ready for that quiz. You didn't think I forgot about that, did you? Be sure to click the link provided to get that started. With that said, I'm Giovanni with Mass Credit Relief. Have a great day and thanks for watching.